guys, I'm D-Mac from NBA Fantasy Bible, and along with me is Kayla Fonte. And together, we're Between Two Hoops. Kayla, how are you going?
I'm doing really well. How about you?
Really well. How'd you go with your matchups this week?
I had a really good week, actually. I won most of my matchups, so I'll take it. How about you?
Nice, nice. I was on the positive side of the ledger, which is good, but I did lose my matchup by one block in my hometown
Oh,
league, and that's my most important league. I got done by Kevin Herter. My opponent had Kevin Herter, block extraordinaire. So he got 2 blocks in the last quarter to kill me. I was like, oh, God.
oh,
So
that's
that was
rough.
pretty hard to swallow. But apart from that, pretty good week. But 2 shows today. We are firstly doing our buy lows and sell highs. Shall we get straight into it?
Let's do it.
Okay. Headlined with our sell high, Brandon Miller. So I can't wait to speak about him, but let's get into our buy lows. Now, here's the list for this week, and we will take you through line by line. But showing on this screen, we've got the 9-cat ranking. Thank you again to hashtag basketball. So thanks very much. Go check them out at hashtagbasketball.com. And of course, our points league rank, that is based on Yahoo ranks. And so we've got it broken down by the last week, so the last 7 days, but also the last 2 weeks as well, just to give you a little bit of an additional sample size as well. So a lot of people will look at the last 7 days, and recency bias is a thing, but what we'll do is just give you a bit more of a sample size as well and take you through some of those combinations. But starting with Desmond Bane. Now, really disappointing so far this season. Memphis is still dealing with a lot of injuries, but I believe Ja Morant is questionable to return. Perhaps that actually helps Desmond Bane's value, but look at some of those numbers. The last 7 days, he's ranked 216th in 9-cat, and a lot of that is down to just horrific shooting splits.
Yeah, it's been a bit surprising too, especially with the Grizzlies so shorthanded. But like you said, it could help having Morant back. Yeah, the points just aren't where they need to be. The threes as well. He's much better than 13 points per game, as we've seen like earlier this season, last season as well. The defensive stats are decent, but it really does come down to those shooting splits, like 37% field goal percentage, 67% free throw. That's just not it.
Yeah, and what I've shown here is just the last 2 weeks worth of stats as well. And so this has been somewhat of a trend for him this season. But yeah, like I said, there's going to be some guys returning to the team. Maybe there's a little bit less heat on him as well, and he gets some open looks with Ja Morant back in the lineup. So we think he's a massive buy low right now. Next one on the list, Brandon Ingram. So the Pelicans are still short-handed, but a lot of his value for 9-cats has really been reduced again through bad shooting. Look at his numbers over the last 2 weeks. It's not as bad as over the last 7 days, but again, we wanted to give you a bit more of a sample size. But it's the field goal percentage, but it's also the turnovers. And again, we like to reiterate that we tend to disregard turnovers a little bit, but it's still a category, and a lot of you still count that and still try to win that category. So very valid anyway, but still the numbers that he's putting up earlier in the season just aren't there at the moment.
Yeah, and this is another surprising one too. The Pelicans, they're another shorthanded team, so you expect a lot more production. It also does come down to the shooting splits as well. The 43% field goal percentage, as you can see, is red, and even the turnovers too. A lot of the value just tied up there is going to bring him down the rankings, like 5 per game. That's rough.
Yeah, he's probably trying to facilitate a little bit more. I know they're really short on their point guard depth at the moment, but by all accounts, CJ McCollum's very close. DeJounte Murray's very close. Jose Alvarado's still sidelined for a little bit longer, so he's facilitating more. Trey Murphy's come back into the team over the last 2 weeks, so perhaps there's a little bit of a correlation from that sense, but I still think he is a buy low just based on those numbers. You juxtapose that with his points league numbers, it's a lot more solid over the last 2 weeks for points league. And I think that's just indicative of some of his poor shooting, but also those turnovers as well. Trying to do a little bit too much. Next one, Jalen Suggs. Now, again, the value being reduced comes down to his shooting. A field goal percentage at 36.4% over the last 2 weeks just is not cutting it. But again, the free throws, this is a thing. Now, in previous seasons, Jalen Suggs has been very unreliable from the stripe, but 94.8% from the free throw line over the last 2 weeks. And that's been consistent across the entire season. So that's really good. But I do think that Paolo Banchero being out of the team actually has impacted him in a negative way.
Oh, interesting. I think so in a sense as well. Not as much though. I think well, the most negative impact is going to be on Franz Wagner once he returns, but I think it's helped him actually a little bit in a sense. But I'm also looking at the free throw numbers here. Last year, he was 75.6% from the line. This year,
Mm,
he's averaging 92%, which
yeah,
is
crazy.
crazy improvements. But yeah, it's a field goal percentage that's really dragging him down. And it's also funny too because in points leagues his ranking is a lot lower. Yeah, the efficiency is red there, but it's also his mediocre numbers that are across the board as well that's affecting that points league ranking.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Franz Wagner a little bit later on, but Franz is just doing everything at the moment, so maybe that's just taking a little bit more of the usage away from Suggs, which is interesting because Bankero is still out, but it's that shooting, 36.4% over the last 2 weeks is really killing him. It looked like he may miss a couple of games with a hamstring complaint, but it looks like he is not on the injury list, which is fantastic news. Not good news for those that have Anthony Black, but really good for those that have Jalen Suggs. And maybe this is a great opportunity to buy low. People thinking maybe the hamstring injury could be a lingering concern. So I would be going to try to buy low on Jalen Suggs. Next one, Julius Randle. Again, comes down to the shooting, but he was really good. He was fantastic and solid from the free throw line, but you don't expect him to continue that. And we've seen that over the last week, but over the last 2 weeks, just his numbers have been quite poor, exacerbated over the last 7 days, actually. But points leagues, still very solid.
Yeah, and like you said, it comes down to the efficiency. But even the steals and blocks too. He's not a really high stocks guy, but you
Yeah.
still expect like a couple here or there from him, which is really dragging him down. Yeah, the points and rebounds are looking okay, but outside of that, there's not really much green here.
Yeah, I think he does have room for improvement, even with the rebounds as well. Still in the green, but I think he can actually average a little bit higher than that. So buy low for us. Next guy, Austin Reeves. Now he had a really hot start to the season, but he's taken a bit of a back seat. And I won't say it's because of Dalton Connect, but it's also just looking at those shooting numbers horrific. And he's been typically very solid from both the field and the free throw line, but yeah, really bad over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and it's not something that I'm too worried about either. A lot of players just go through slumps every now and then, so this could just be a normal slump, which makes him a good buy low opportunity. But he's still going to have that role. Yeah, Connect Four has looked fantastic, especially due to injuries and things like that. But Austin Reeves is here to stay, and he'll be bouncing back sooner.
And look at those minutes per game over the last 2 weeks, still really solid, around 35 minutes per game. So you know he's going to be okay from that point of view. It's just coming down to those numbers as well, and that's uncharacteristic. And I think, yeah, he's due a bounce back. Kyle Kuzma, a really slow start to the season for him. Still trying to find his legs, and the minutes are of concern at this stage, but he is ramping up, and I still think he is a buy low.
I think so too. It's also concerning that there's been a lot of trade rumors around him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens because like if he is traded, then that'll mean better things for other younger stars we've talked about over and over again. But with Kuzma, his future is a little bit murky. But I think he's going to be a buy low for a while.
Yeah, you're right. And those younger guys, we're thinking of Bilal Koulibaly. Koulibaly's cooled off after the hot start to the season. That's probably directly correlated to Kyle Kuzma's return as well. So, yeah, a lot of interesting things to happen with the tanking Wizards, but yet still a buy low in our eyes. Darius Garland. Now, he was hot. He missed a game through injury, but again, the shooting has really let him down. It's probably something that we've seen over the past few seasons. To start the season, he was on fire, and we knew that was unsustainable. He was actually on
Mhm.
our Sell High show. Was it last week or the week before? So we knew that he would slow down. But now I think it's actually turned to the point where he's a buy low.
Yeah, and this is a big reason about why I'm not really a huge fan of Darius Garland. I just find him too inconsistent. Because yeah, 2 weeks ago he was on our sell highs list, but now things have turned around, and especially that field goal percentage, 41% over the past 2 weeks. But if you look at the past week, it's 25.7%. That's a smaller sample size, but that's still rough. And he could be up and down. So he could be a sell high at some point again. But right now, buy low.
Yeah, buy low. You get those elite assists, good points still, and actually quite low turnovers for those again that pay attention to turnovers. I don't, but it's really good for him to only have 2.5 turnover. So that's assist to turnover ratio is quite good for him. But yeah, it's down to the field goal percentage. Next one, Naz Reid. Now take us through this one because you've put him on the buy low list.
Yeah, so over the past 7 days, I mean, he's ranked well past the 300s. We all know that he can provide a lot higher value than that. I'm not saying like he's a top 100 guy at this point of the season, but I think he's closer to just outside of the hundreds, between 100 150. He can still give you good value, especially with Cat being gone. I think he's just going through a little bit of a slump. He's still seeing decent minutes, 26 per game over the past 2 weeks. So I think the value will still be there. He's just going through a slump. Things will turn around, and this is more of a buy low for deeper leagues as well.
Yeah, I think so. And do you think he's a must hold or a must roster guy in 12 teamers?
I think he's borderline right now. I would rather hold and see how things play out because, like I said, I do think things will turn around at some point for him. But if he is your worst player, then I wouldn't be afraid to let go of him for a hot waiver wire pickup.
Yeah, I think he's droppable without necessarily being a drop in every situation. But yeah, buy low for the deeper leagues. All right, Darius Halliburton, I believe that he's been on pretty much every one of our shows for buy low. He turned it around. He looked really good in the last game overnight, but I still think just based on the last 2 weeks, but even the last 7 days, it looks a lot better than what it was, but it's still a buy low. And I think he may have turned a corner. He just looked really sharp last night. The shooting form, I won't say it's back, but he was still hitting his threes, which is nice. The field goal percentage is really much a downer at this stage. Still a lead assist. I would expect it to probably jump up even more so. There's a couple of guys still out injured for Indiana, but I don't think that'll impact him.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And he seems like he is starting to find his footing and his shooting form, which is a promising sign. So who knows how long he'll be a buy low for? But I think a lot of managers are also going to be looking at his past performances as well. Yes, there is recency bias, but I think just looking at a season at a whole, they're still going to be comfortable to buy low, but that window could be closing after that last game.
Yeah, look, some may actually think of it as a sell high, but for me, I'm probably the other camp where I think it is still a buy low situation. I think he can return. I won't necessarily pen him in for first rounder, but I think he'll be there and thereabouts. But for me, still a buy low. And finally, injured Paul George. Now, people just must be so frustrated. I think you can get him for pretty cheap at this stage, but still out. Not sure what the status is for the next game. We shall see. But yeah, very disappointing so far for Paul George.
Yeah, you summed it up perfectly. It's just people are getting frustrated with him, and the same could be said for Joel Embiid, who's still having health issues, right? So, yeah, these guys I think are going to be buy lows repeatedly throughout the season.
I think so, but with Paul George, I think if he can string some games together, he's going to have some really good value. You know what he provides. It's the points, it's the threes, it's the steals. It's pretty much everything across the board, but it's maintaining his health, which is key at this stage. Field goal percentage is going to be up and down, typically down, but 37.7% is probably lower than what we expect. So, yeah, huge buy low in our eyes. And I think he may come back over the next week or so. So, fingers crossed he's able to return and return really strongly.
Mhm.
Let's get to our sell highs. Once again, here's a snapshot of some of the guys that we'll look at, and we'll go line by line just to give you a glimpse at some of their sample and some of their stats over the course of the last 7 days to 14 days. Now, starting with Brandon Miller. Now, humongous sell high, and he's looked awesome, but look at those shooting splits, look at those numbers, completely unsustainable.
Yeah, I mean 6.3 threes per game, like there is no way. I mean maybe closer to like 2 or 3ish, but 6. Even the points too. Yeah, there's a couple of injuries right now. Miles Bridges is out for a little while. Trey Mann missed a game. Williams also tore his ACL. So there's a lot of injuries, and part of the reason why he was able to produce that kind of production on the offensive end, especially, which is
Yeah,
just
and here's some
nuts.
highlights of Brandon Miller as well. It just gives you a glimpse of pretty much his game, and he's just been hot, working really well with the LaMelo ball. Obviously, LaMelo had a 50 piece the other night, but Brandon Miller has just been shooting the lights out, averaged 33 points over the last 7 days. Small sample size, but across the season, he's still ranked 37th in 9 cat, which is which is crazy. I wasn't as high on him as a lot of other people, and I will probably admit that I was wrong because he's looked awesome. But again, we still think he is a sell high just because of what you said. Some guys out at the moment and just unsustainable shooting right now.
Yeah, even looking at his points per game too, like this year he's averaging about 20, right? Right now he's averaging 33 over the past week, right? Like definitely unsustainable. Even if actually looking at the threes too, I didn't realize he was averaging 3.8 per game this season, which is a lot higher than I thought. But I think even that will come down slightly. Last season he averaged 2.5 per game. So I think
Yeah.
he's going to hover closer to like the 3-ish mark.
Yeah, I think that's easily attainable for him. I think he's really stepped up. He's surpassed Miles Bridges in terms of the usage on this team. I think he's the clear number two on this team now. I think
Yeah.
that has definitely been bestowed upon him. But looking at his numbers over the last week, 2.3 steals per game and 1.3 blocks. And I don't think that is sustainable. And a lot of his values come from that as well. So again, the number two ranked player over the last 7 days, the number 38th ranked player over the last 2 weeks, and 37th over the course of the season. And he was shooting really poorly come the start of the season. He was on our buy
Mhm.
low list not that long ago. So yeah, he's turned it around very quickly. And a lot of that is due to a lot of the injuries. So let's see what happens with Miles Bridges. Hopefully he returns over the next few games. I think Trey Mann may return in the next game as well. As you said, Grant Williams is out for the season, which is really unfortunate with the ACL. But yeah, huge numbers by Brandon Miller, and that's why he is our number one sell high candidate. But yeah, amazing highlights and yeah, hopefully more of the same. Yeah,
Mhm.
possibly most improved player this season.
Yeah, he's definitely a candidate. I mean, he's looked amazing so far.
Yeah. Now, getting into the rest of our list. Next one, Franz Wagner. He was on our list last week, and nothing's changed there. And we didn't expect it to really change too much, but I didn't expect him to maintain these shooting numbers. We did expect the
Mhm.
high usage, still with Paolo Banchero on the sideline.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked fantastic. And when you're looking at the stats here, there's only one category that's red. So we'll take it. I mean, even looking at those points, almost 30 per game, that's not going to be maintainable once Bankero returns.
No, but I think he's a huge shout for All-Star honors this season if
Yeah.
he can somewhat maintain some of these numbers. But yeah, crazy. He's fun to watch as well. He's not, your typical athletic guy, but yeah, he's really, really fun to watch. Next one, Larry Markkinen, another European guy. He's doing really well, and I think he's a sell high just because we've spoken about it a lot over the last few weeks, but we don't really know what the Jazz are going to do later in the season. They are tanking. They're tanking really hard, and I think that will directly impact Larry Markkinen. So whilst he's been the number four ranked player in 9Cat over the last week, 27th over the last 2 weeks in 9Cat, I think it's time to sell him. Yes, he's hot, and you could be losing a bit of value, but if you can get yourself I would say a top 40 guy, I would do so. I'd make that switch immediately.
Yeah, I think you really got to look long term here, because yeah, like you said, you might be losing out on some short term value, but in the long run, I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen with Markkinen down the stretch. Like it's most likely that he's going to be a shutdown candidate, miss a couple of games here and there, and you don't want that happening to you right near the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, and we've seen a little bit of poor form throughout the season, but yeah, over the last couple of weeks, he's looked really, really hot, and hopefully that continues a little bit for him. But while he is hot, I think it is time to sell high. Cam Johnson, talking about hot shooting, completely unsustainable. 57.7% from the field over the last 7 days. Hasn't been too dissimilar over the last fortnight. And in fact, over the course of the season, he's been absolutely on fire. But again, similar to Larry Markkinen with the Jazz, I think there's going to be some shenanigans late season with the Nets.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And I believe he was on our sell high list last week. So I'm still surprised to see that he's maintaining like fairly similar value to that week. But like you said, it's completely unsustainable. I mean, the percentages will come down. He's not going to be averaging six threes per game on 29 points. He's gonna come back to earth at some point.
They're having a lot of lineup changes. Ben Simmons misses games. I know Dennis Schroeder missed the last game. Nick Claxton's been in and out as well. So he's the guy that's really been the the constant on that squad, which is great. And I think a lot of that consistency has just allowed him to really find his groove. So that's really good. But again, he's a huge sell high right now. Next one, Nikola Vucevic. Again, these European guys are really dominating right now, but he's putting up these numbers, and I think they are somewhat sustainable. But again, the issue here is he's constantly in trade rumors. And again, the Bulls, are they going to be actually vying for a playoff berth? I'm not so sure. And if that's the case, if they're really looking towards next season or future seasons, does it mean that he's going to be on the chopping block? I think it may.
I think so too. Yeah, it's the same kind of situation where it's just really murky. We don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, at this point, a trade seems to be the most likely scenario. But even then, I think like some of these numbers will cool down a little bit. The threes, I think for sure, the points, even the blocks as well, I think will come down a bit too.
Yeah, those blocks are
Yeah.
completely outrageous for him. So when I said I think this is sustainable, I think some of the shooting numbers are somewhat sustainable in terms of the points, not the threes, but the blocks are what really stands out for him. He's never been known for a big blocks number, even though he is a big guy. So yeah, sell high, good form, but also the risk of late season shenanigans for the Bulls. Tari Eason. Now, I had to do a double take when I looked at these numbers, and we've been big on him for quite some time, but 18th in NICAT over the last week, 46th over the last fortnight.
Yeah, that's just been fantastic, and a lot of that comes down to those steal numbers, 3.5 per game. A bit unsustainable. He is a defensive ace though, but still 3.5 is a tad high.
But how good are those numbers in only 23.8 minutes per
Fantastic.
game over the last week? That's pretty crazy. And we know what he can do. He's a fantasy darling. He's still not starting. Jabari Smith Jr. is still starting ahead of him, which probably will maintain for quite some time. But you look at that second unit, I've been high on Amen Thompson. I'm probably higher on Tari Eason right now.
No way.
Yeah, yeah. I know, crazy. But yeah, that's the steal numbers similar to your fantasy boyfriend with Dyson Daniels. I think he's
Mhm.
actually outperformed him over the last couple of weeks, definitely over the last 7 days.
Yeah, definitely. Dyson, I think, is ranked a little bit lower, but that's okay. Bounce back.
He'll bounce back. He'll bounce back. Andrew Wiggins, again, look at those shooting numbers. That is completely unsustainable. I'm not sure what's happening. It seems to be one week Buddy Hield is hot, another week Andrew Wiggins is hot. Steph Curry's been consistent. He's had a bit of a quieter week this week, but Andrew Wiggins, he's really stepped up.
Yeah, it seems like they all like to take turns with being on the sell high and buy low list. So
Yeah,
right
they
now
heard
it's
about the
Andrew
show.
Wiggins on sell high. Yeah, exactly right. They all want to be featured on some kind of segment. But yeah, he's a sell high right now. Oh yeah, the field goal free throw that's going to come down a little bit. Same with points, 24.8. That's crazy. I mean, last season was a really down year for him. He's starting to look a lot better this year, which is great, but unsustainable.
I'm really happy for him. He was really down in confidence last season for
Mhm.
a lot of off-court issues, but it seems like he's turned a corner, and that's really good for not just him personally, but also his fantasy output. So awesome to see. He wasn't that long ago coming off of waiver wire, so I think I picked him up in a lot of leagues myself. So it's awesome to see. Just going backwards. Andrew Wiggins, thank you very much. We spoke about you, my friend. Now, a couple of nicks that we'll speak about. Firstly, OG Anunoby. Look at his numbers over the course of the last week, but also the last 2 weeks. Very consistent, very similar numbers over the last fortnight, to be honest. So this could maintain. The reason why he's a sell high, firstly, it's the shooting, which is really great. It's good to see that OG's hitting these numbers, but I don't think 52 and 53% is really his jam. I haven't seen that when he was at Toronto. He was in the 40s, but also the Knicks. I just don't think they're going to contend with the way that the roster is constructed at the moment. So I feel like there could be something um, to change, and I'm just purely speculating. And you don't usually make decisions based on speculation, but I just feel like the way that they're constructed right now, I think they need something different. OG Anunoby, again, sell high for me, just based on the current form, the current numbers, but also the risk that something may happen towards trade deadline.
Yeah, I agree with both of those points. And I think that the Knicks are really lacking depth. So there could be a potential move there, which would affect a lot of players' values on the team. But yeah, I don't think this is definitely not sustainable. With Anunoby, he's very up and down, and there's also a lot of injury concerns with him as well, which I'm
Yeah.
still kind of worried about there. But I mean, I think he's at peak value right now. I don't see him getting better than this.
No, I completely agree. I think he's at peak value. So if there's a better time, please let me know. But this is the best time to sell high on OG Anunoby. Similarly for his teammate Josh Hart. So yeah, crazy rank. They're both in the
Mhm.
20s over the last fortnights, which is great for the Knicks. But yeah, I don't think this is sustainable for Josh Hart. Good to see him with these performances, but I just don't see it happening for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he'll have like little stretches here and there where he can post similar production as we've seen him do repeatedly. But even look at those minutes too. I mean, when you're playing almost 40 minutes per game, yeah, this is going to happen sometimes, right? But yeah, I think it's going to be up and down, especially when you're in such a stacked starting lineup.
And something else that can happen and higher risk of happening when you're playing close to 40 minutes per game, Thibs, injuries. And we know
Mhm.
that the Knicks are not deep, as you said, they're not deep, very, very shallow bench. So I fear that something could happen to some of these starters. So we'll see what happens. Perhaps that's a good thing for Mikal Bridges because he doesn't ever seem to get injured and he may make the most of any injuries in that starting lineup.
Mhm.
Next one, John Collins. He was on our list last week. Walker Kessler came back. John Collins still put up a really good game next to Walker Kessler, which is good. But again, I still think it's a sell high. We spoke about John Collins of yesteryear when he was at the Hawks and he was a second or third rounder. He's currently at that right now. Pretty crazy to see. Awesome to see. Those steal numbers are unsustainable. I think the shooting splits unbelievable, and he's always been known as a very highly efficient big man, roto darling. But again, I don't know what's going to happen. Similar to what Larry Markkinen is going to go through later in the season, perhaps John Collins is a little bit different. We saw it last season that he tended to play a lot of the games come the end of the season. Larry missed quite a few. So maybe he continues this. What do you think? Is it a sell high or do you think this can actually maintain?
I think he is a sell high. I just think some of these numbers here are unsustainable. Even like the perfect three throw percentage, like that 100% will come down a little bit. Even the field goal, averaging a double double, I don't think so. I think his rebounds will be close to like 8 or 9 possibly, but I don't see him averaging a double-double for the rest of the season. I think the minutes will still continue to be there. But yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens down the stretch. Markkanen is going to be their number one priority, so they're going to want to be careful with him. With Collins, I think he'll still see decent runtime. Maybe miss a game here and there if they're not competing for anything. But I think this is the perfect time to sell high. I don't think he's going to get better than this.
Yeah, I agree there wholeheartedly. Now, next one of your guys, but Tyus Jones. Take us through the last 7 days for Tyus.
Yeah, the main reason he's a sell high is just because the Suns were dealing with a lot of injuries. Kevin Durant has been out for the past like 2-ish weeks. Same with Bradley Beal. He'll be returning soon. But still, look at those assist numbers, the points, the threes. He's never been a really high points guy, so that's going to cool off a little bit. Even the assists too. I think he was averaging about six this season, so that'll come down once the team is healthy. So that window of sell high is a little bit smaller because once everyone returns, it's going to go down.
Yeah, and for those that do look longer than the past 7 days, you look at the last 2 weeks, 127th. That's probably about where he's at, to be honest. But really hot week, even though it's a small sample size of 2 games. Some people do look at, there's that recency bias, and they will look at the last 2 games. Sometimes that's just easier to look at when you are trying to find some guys that you need on your team. So yeah, I think he can be a sell high, maybe a little bit more difficult to execute just because it is a smaller sample size. All right. That's a wrap for our buy lows and sell highs. Anything of note coming up, Kayla? How's the BBB show?
It's doing really well. We're going to record another episode either tomorrow or Wednesday, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I'm catching all of those shows. It's really good to see that you're getting some guys in your league actually appearing. And when I say guys, I mean gals. But yeah, it's really good viewing. Make sure you do give them a follow.
Thank
But
you.
speaking of follow, you can find Kayla on Twitter or X at Kayla_Fonte. You'll find myself at NBA Fantasy Bible. We are, of course, over on Blue Sky as well. please make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us wherever your good podcasts are being listened to. Thank you very much, Kayla, and until next
Thank you.
time, thanks, guys. See you later.